Hey, welcome everyone. I am Christine Biglin from St. Mary's County Library, and tonight we have with us Barb Whipkey, who is the owner of Wild Birds Unlimited in LaPlata and Lexington Park, and she is here to tell us all about hummingbirds. Welcome, Barb.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. Hopefully, by now you've seen a hummingbird or two or more. If you don't have your hummingbird feeders up, tomorrow is the day to do that. The hummingbirds did come back early this year. Every year they come back a little bit earlier. We used to say put your hummingbird feeders up on tax day. Now we've changed that to April Fool's Day. And this year we started seeing them April 3rd. So definitely get those hummingbird feeders up. So I'm going to share my screen here, all about hummingbirds. So you just have to turn your head sideways to watch this one. Not really. I'm going to watch this little video here. You're probably thinking, my hummingbirds don't share like that. The reason those hummingbirds are being a little less aggressive is that is late in the summer. So those are younger hummingbirds or females. Most of the adult males have already headed south in this video. So there's a little bit of less testosterone in the picture there. So they're more willing to share. So the key is in the beginning, you're going to put multiple hummingbird feeders up and you're going to spread them out. One out front, one outside, kind of keep them out of sight of each other so that they're not able to hoard those hummingbird feeders. And then you're going to bring in more hummingbirds by doing that. The hummingbirds we have around here, we have one type typically, are ruby-throated hummingbirds. The one on the left with the red is the male, and the one without the red is our female. Sometimes you're going to notice that that red actually looks black or green. It's still red. That's just the lighting playing tricks on you. When you see that black, if you just kind of turn to the side, change positions, you'll notice that that black turns red again. So if they have a band on the neck, it's a male. Without a band, it's a female in the beginning. Once nesting has begun, then it gets a little trickier to tell. You'll be able to tell at that point if you've got a juvenile male because you'll see some gray streaking through the neck. And that's the start of the red coming in there. But that's not, for now, you're just going to know male, female to start with. While they're here, each female is going to nest twice. And in that nest, she's going to raise 2 to 3 young during the time she's here. Occasionally, we will have rufous hummingbirds, but that's typically during the winter time. So we do always ask if any time after October you see a hummingbird, please try to get us some pictures and send those to us. Because at that point, you could potentially have a rufous hummingbird. And in that case, we will try to get a hummingbird bander out there to band that hummingbird. If that hummingbird comes and spends a winter with you, they are more of a cold weather hummingbird. And if they come and spend a winter with you, there's a good chance they're going to come back and visit you the next winter. So then what happens is that bander will come back again, weigh, check out the health of that hummingbird just for a little bit of science on that. So if you, after October, just keep in mind, any hummingbirds you see after October, if you can get pictures for them, send to us. We can help coordinate that for you. So a few hummingbird facts. As I mentioned, typically on the East Coast, it's only the ruby-throated that we have. A hummingbird weighs less than a nickel. So the next time you have some change, think about the weight of a nickel. That's the actual weight of a hummingbird. Here in Southern Maryland, early April to late September. So I know several of you that are watching are from, different areas, but you can kind of judge based on that area. If you're a little further south, those of you from West Virginia, you can kind of time it. You're going to be a little bit later getting yours in. Hummingbirds' feet are used for perching only. So where with some of our birds, they'll actually walk with their feet. They'll use their feet for eating. Hummingbirds use their feet for nothing but perching. A hummingbird lives an average of 9 years, and then they winter in southern Mexico to northern Panama. But as we're seeing the weather change, some of them are not going quite as far south as they've used to. We've seen, obviously, a lot of the birds we're seeing a lot of changes with, and hummingbirds are no exception to that. They flap their wings about 53 times per second. I dare you to give that a try. Their flight speed is 30 miles per hour, just normal flight. If they're trying to escape from a predator, it's 50 miles per hour. A hummingbird can fly left, right, up, down, backwards, and can even fly upside down. So if you kind of watch them when they're at a feeder, a lot of times they will actually take off from that feeder and take off upside down to escape. They're also able to hover. If you've ever noticed them hovering, they do that by moving their wings in a figure-8 pattern. That's what enables them to do that hovering. Their diet, we think of them being nectar eaters, but actually they eat a lot of tree sap, insects, and pollen as well. The nectar is actually a supplement to these things. They do eat 50 times a day and in large quantities. Especially right now as they're returning, you're going to notice them coming to your feeders and actually sitting and hanging out, which is a good reason to find feeders that have perches on them. If you have perches, they're actually going to sit and hang out there. I talked about perches, something like this. You're going to catch them actually sitting there and eating. If your feeders have no perches, they're having to expend more energy trying to hover there to eat. So if you've got a feeder that has a perch on it, they can actually sit there. And of course, the win for you is you get to see them longer. If you drank the way that a hummingbird drinks in proportion, every time you took a drink, you would be drinking a gallon every drink. And then the mating and life cycle. The males return first. So those of you that are already seeing them, the first ones to return are those males. That's that one with the red throat. They get here and establish their territory. Now, I do want to mention with that, a lot of these first ones we're seeing, they're going to stop, spend a couple days with us, and they're going to head further north. So don't be surprised if you see hummingbirds and then all of a sudden they disappear. Those ones were just using your feeders as a refueling station, and they're headed on north to establish their territories. Our ones who stay will be coming along behind them. So those males are going to get here first. They'll establish their mating territory, and then they're going to stay here. So that's why those males come first, so they have a territory. Because that male is going to mate with every female that comes into his territory. Once he's mated, he's done. It's all up to her to build the nest, raise the kids, teach them where to find food. He's done. He just goes along and mates with every female in his territory. So before he mates, he does a little courtship display. So what he'll do, the female's here, And he comes along. So this is really cool to see, but he'll do this little display dance where he'll fly back and forth kind of in a U shape around her. So watch for this when you see this happening. That's his little display dance that he'll do. It's just a U shape back and forth in front of her. During courtship, his wings will be twice as fast as it does normally. And then, like I mentioned, once the courting's done, he's done. He moves on to the next one. So you're also going to notice that once that female is sitting on her nest, that your feeder activity is going to slow down again. That female needs to stay close to her nest because she does not have the help of the male to guard her nest. She's going to be a little more reliant on bugs and things closer to wherever she's nesting. If she leaves the nest, comes all the way back to your feeder to get something to drink, she's leaving her nest exposed during that time. So again, you'll see your feeder activity slow down during that time. And then as far as nesting, so the female's building that nest, it's going to be the size of a thimble when she has built that nest. Once she's building it small, because again, she's got to keep those babies protected because she has no help. It's built in a tree or shrub 10 to 40 feet high. Good luck finding it because, like I said, it's a tiny little thimble there. Your best bet at finding them is in the winter after all the leaves are off. They make them out of thistle or dandelion and wrap them with strands of spider web. You can also use a Hummer nesting material, which is something like this, that you can wrap around it. It expands. The purpose in that is so as those babies grow, it's going to expand with the babies, but it's still going to hold them tight, kind of like an elastic in there. So it keeps those babies tight in there. The exterior is wrapped with lichen or moss, so it kind of camouflages them in there. Again, she's got to do everything she can to keep them safe because she's a single mom trying to raise those babies alone. She has 2 to 3 eggs in that nest. Building of the nest takes about 6 to 10 days to finish it. And so here's a sample of a little nest there. 1 to 3 eggs, as I mentioned. Incubation is the time it takes from when she starts setting on those eggs. So she's going to set on those eggs for 12 to 14 days. Once they hatch, those babies will stay in the nest for 18 to 22 days before they leave the nest. And then at that point, she'll start bringing them to the feeders. So at that point, now you've got more young ones coming to your nest with the white throat on them. You'll be able to tell that they are young ones if you look at the end of the tail. They're going to look smaller than her, but they're actually the same size. The difference is their tail's not all the way grown in. So when you look and you're like, oh, that's a really tiny hummingbird. If you really take a look, you're going to notice it's your eyes deceiving you. They're the same size. They just don't have a full tail on them. And then she's going to go through that whole cycle one more time. So she'll have 2 nesting while she's here with us. So threats to the hummingbird. Obviously, like all birds, humans were one of the biggest threats. Habitat loss, destruction. We go to build homes now, and instead of strategically taking down trees, we just clear everything out. Or we go to put in parking lots and we just, wipe out everything. Small birds of prey, like our American kestrels or sharp-shinned hawks. Praying mantises are another one. I know it's hard to believe that, but it is true. I did not put any pictures or anything to show you, but if you want to, you can Google it and see. But praying mantises are a problem. So if you see a praying mantis on your hummingbird feeder, go out and gently move it away because he is on your hummingbird feeder for a reason. They know that those hummingbirds are going to come to the feeder and they are laying there in waiting. So go and shoo them away from your hummingbird feeders. Snakes and lizards are another one. They will, we actually had a customer last year come in and she went to fill her hummingbird feeder. And as she did, she noticed that up her black pole, there was a snake wrapped around it all the way down the hook. Just as she went to grab it, she realized that there was a snake there. So one of the things you can do to help with that is things like adding a weather guard to the top of your feeders. So then it's not as easy for a snake to camouflage themselves above a feeder. It makes it a little trickier for them. Honestly, we had always sold the weather guards to protect from the elements, the rain and that, more red to attract them. But after having that experience with the customer, we realized that there was another really good reason to have those weather guards on. And then frogs and fish. A lot of times, if you watch a pond or lake, you'll see the hummingbirds flying over the water, grabbing insects and bugs. Well, those frogs and fish will also see that little bird flying over there and jump up and grab the hummingbird. So that's another problem. And then, of course, again, with all birds, cats are a big problem. So, encourage your friends, neighbors to keep the cats indoors. And then avoiding pesticides. This is things we can do to help the hummingbirds. Avoid pesticides, plant things for the hummingbirds. When you're trying to think what can you plant, you always want to look for red and orange. Think tubular shaped flowers. And I've listed a few of the favorites there. The bee balm, cardinal flower, jewelweed, trumpet creeper, trumpet honeysuckle, and red buckeye are a few favorites. You can also add a basket with rotting fruit or bananas to attract fruit flies. So if you're going to do that, don't put it right off your porch because I don't think you want those coming in the house. But if you've got some fruit that's starting to go bad, instead of just throwing it out, cut it up, put it in a basket, and hang it out somewhere that's going to attract the fruit flies in, and you'll see the hummingbirds coming for those fruit flies. You'll also notice, especially with those bananas, the butterflies will come for the calcium in the bananas. And then think about red on your feeder, not in your feeder. So I know there's still a lot of stores out there selling that red nectar. You do not want the red nectar. It is not healthy for the hummingbirds. Easiest way is just mix up. You can use your own sugar, no organics, no brown sugar, plain old good old-fashioned sugar. 1 cup sugar, 1 part sugar, 4 parts water is the ratio you want to use, but absolutely no red dye in there. And then I already mentioned multiple feeders. The more feeders you put up, the more hummingbirds you're going to attract. Every year you'll end up with more hummingbirds. I already mentioned that every female is going to nest twice and have 2 to 3 young. Those young now have your GPS ingrained. So next year they're coming back again. We've had customers come in and say, I have a hummingbird that keeps coming to my window. And we'll ask, did you have a hummingbird feeder there last year? No, we just moved into this house. Well, guess what? Whoever lived there before you had a hummingbird feeder in that window, so you better get one in there. Or hummingbirds will come back before the person gets the feeder up. So they'll let you know that you're late to the game. So, all those you raised this year are coming back to see you next year. And then offering nesting material is another great way. So choosing a feeder, things you want to look at. There's a lot of really cute feeders out there, but when you're shopping for a hummingbird feeder, think about how you're going to clean that cute feeder. Can you get a brush down into that feeder? Are you going to be able to get it in there to clean it? I already mentioned perches are a plus. Is it drip free? A lot of those hummingbirds that have the bottle up here, and then they have that little spout that comes out this way, gravity is working against you on those. No matter what you do, those are going to drip. We do have one style that has a bottle here that I will sell. It has the bottle up here, but the base of it is facing up. So you're not going to have the dripping problems. So this one does work. It's still not my favorite style. My favorite is this one right here, just because it's so easy to clean. You've got an ant mode in here. You fill this with water. When the ants try to crawl down, they're going to drown in there. So you're not going to be cleaning this constantly because of the ants in the nectar. I always say these ones saved my marriage. My husband's a beekeeper, so bees were always on my hummingbird feeders. These ones, we can add little nectar guard tips to it, which keeps the bees out of there. You also want to avoid yellow. A lot of hummingbird feeders have yellow on them. Bees are attracted to yellow. So if you have a hummingbird feeder that has yellow on it, expect that you're going to see a lot more bees on that hummingbird feeder. So if you don't want to deal with a lot of bees, stay away from ones with yellow on it. A hummingbird can find a feeder from 3/4 of a mile away. Another reason that you don't need to add that red nectar in there. Just the red on the hummingbird feeder is going to be enough to bring them in. And then I mentioned the nectar guard recipe, or the nectar recipe. 1 part sugar, 4 parts water. Keep it refrigerated. Keep in mind when you look out there, that nectar, if you wouldn't drink it, don't feed it to the hummingbirds. When you start to see it turning cloudy, that's time to change it, which is another reason to think about using ones that are clear. If it's clear, you're going to notice when it's turning cloudy. If you're watching your hummingbirds and you notice it's cloudy, that's your key. It's time to change it. Right now, you can probably get away with changing your nectar every 5 days or so. As cold as it's been, probably 5 to 7 days. If you add a little bit of nectar defender to it, you can definitely get the 7 days or so. As we get into the heat of the summer, you're going to have to change it every 3 to 5 days. But just keep in mind, if you wouldn't drink it, don't serve it to them. Hummingbird's tongue is longer than their beak, and I know we were always taught that they drink it like a straw. They actually don't. They actually lick it up, and they lick it at 12 licks per second. So it's very fast that they're licking that up. And in these ones, any of these styles like this, you can actually see when they're drinking it, you actually get to see their tongue in action, which is kind of cool to see. Kind of covered a lot of that. Make sure that you're cleaning them. We have little port brushes. You want to look and make sure when you're cleaning them, get a little port brush and get down in those ports. Make sure you're getting down in there and cleaning those ports as well. Kind of looks like a mascara brush. You want to clean them with hot water. If you're cleaning them every 3 days or so, plain water is probably going to be good enough. But if it's a little cloudy, use some vinegar in there. Try to stay away from soap if you can. If you have to use soap on it, be sure to super duper over rinse it to make sure you're not leaving any soap residue in there. If you've let it go a little long, you were out of town, forgot one of the feeders, something, a little bit of bleach, 1 part bleach, 9 parts water. And again, be sure to rinse it very, very, very well. Let it dry before you refill it. And then when you're taking these out to hang them up, try not to splash any nectar on the outside. If you do splash nectar on the outside, that's going to call those bees in pretty quickly. Somebody will come find it. They'll go back, let the other bees know that, hey, I found us a source. So if you splash any on the outside, try to wipe that off well before you take it out and hang it up. And that. So we're going to talk about how you can hand feed a hummingbird. So this is using a feeder similar to one of these styles. That's the male because you can see his red there. And then after you've done that, you're going to take those feeders, bring them inside, and you're going to go back out with either a little ring like this or a little piece like this one. It kind of looks like a water bottle top. He starts eating. Lift your finger a little bit and they will sit right down on it. The key is do it in the evenings when they're fueling up for the night. You don't have to wait any time at all, but take those other feeders, bring them inside. The first time I tried to do it with the little one, I thought I would just set the feeders down around my feet. And so I go out there and I'm standing out there holding the little cup. And my husband knocked on the door and I'm thinking, no, I'm trying to feed my hummingbirds. And so he did it a few times. And finally I turn and I give him that look, you know, the look, and look at him. And he points at my feet and all the hummingbirds are down around my feet eating. So make sure you take the hummingbird feeders in the house. But it's really easy to do it. If you do it, like I said, in the evening, you don't have to wait any time at all. You'll just stand where you've been feeding them. You can do it with the flat bottom feeder, stand there and hold it. And then after you've done that a few times, just you can do it with a little one. Let them start eating. As soon as they start eating, lift your finger and they will sit right down on it. So really easy. Yep. And that's the end. Okay, questions?
Well, we just had one so far, but I think you answered it. It said, do hummingbirds return to the same area each year?
Absolutely do, yes. And you'll start to notice certain things because, you know, if you've got a hummingbird feeder that's always here, you'll start to notice like this male or female, this is her lookout or his lookout. They always hang out on this bush or this tree, this branch. And you'll know like the next year, like, oh, look, he's back. They'll use the same one. So after a while, you'll start to notice behavioral patterns that you'll be able to identify some of your hummingbirds, or maybe they've got a white spot on a wing or something like that. So you will be able to come to identify some of them.
Um, Seeing as they're territorial, is it likely that you just have one, same one that keeps coming back to your feeder?
No, so they
Oh,
try to claim a territory, but it does not work as far as it's not one male claiming your whole yard. So he thinks he has your whole yard, but he does not. So we'll have people tell us all the time, oh, I have 3 hummingbirds. If you're counting 3 and you think you have 3, trust me, you have a lot more than
oh,
3.
oh. Okay, that's good. I thought I only had one. Maybe I'll have
Nope.
more.
Yeah, you have. Well, and like I said, the ones you're seeing right now probably are going to leave you in a few days. They're just going to fuel up right now and then head on north.
Okay. Um, how far apart should the feeders be from each other? This is from Tiffany. She has two. Does one need to be in the front and the other in the back? Also, do they need to be far away from my regular bird feeders?
Good question. So you're going to get more hummingbirds if you can put some distance between them. If you put two nearby on a porch, that male is going to try to chase everybody else off of it. So I put one on my porch, I put out one out in the yard. By the end of later in the season, once everybody gets here and the young start coming, I'll have anywhere from 16 to 25 feeders going and spread all around. So that one feeding station you saw was about one of 5 feeding stations that I'll have going.
I would like to see your yard someday, Barb. You have a lot going on. That's
There's a
awesome.
lot going on out there.
Yeah. Um, and I'm sorry if I missed it, but did you cover if you need to keep them separate from the regular bird feeder,
Oh,
or
yeah.
can it be
No, I didn't.
together?
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
So there's mixed thoughts on that. So I do put hummingbird feeders on my regular pole system, but I put them out a little bit away. So anybody that has our pole system, if you have the branch that we add, the perch that you can add onto it, I hang it from the very tip. So that tip extends a little bit further away than our regular hangers. So it's on the pole system, but it's probably sticks out about 18 inches or so from the feeders. It's never been a problem. The hummingbirds aren't intimidated by the other birds, and the hummingbirds don't chase the other birds away. So every pole system has a hummingbird feeder on it at my house.
Um, when the female has her second nesting, does she reuse the same nest or build a new one?
No, she built a new one.
Oh,
And that's pretty much all birds because of the parasites in that. They don't want to expose the babies to anything.
uh,
And I will say that last year we had a customer who, by watching where the female was going, he was able to find a nest, a hummingbird nest. I've never been so lucky, but he was diligent and he kept watching where she was going and he was able to find a hummingbird nest that way.
oh, that's impressive because
I
they're
know, right?
almost
Yeah,
microscopic and can be
I
pretty
know.
high
And
up
they're
there.
like so zoom, zoom, zoomy.
Wow. Okay. Ooh, Karen said, if I see a rufous hummingbird in October. I thought she said she had seen. Sorry. If you see one, do they drink the same sugar water? And what
Yes.
do you
So,
feed them in the winter?
yeah, in fact, great question, Karen. If you see one in October, of course, we're at that point getting to the time of year where it's getting cold. So we'll work with you one-on-one at that point. But what we'll start doing is have you change the nectar ratio so it won't freeze as easily. And then we sell actually a hummingbird heater that you can attach. It attaches to this here and it will keep your nectar from freezing so that you can continue to feed them all winter long because they're going to need to be fed all winter long since insects are not plentiful, nectar's not out there. So they're going to need a helping hand at that point. So, but that's the other thing. When you reach out to us, we're going to work with you one-on-one and help you to help them through the winter months.
Um, oh, so Tammy asks if you are a first time hummingbird feeder and have never seen any before, will they be able to find you?
Yes. So you put that hummingbird feeder out where it's noticeable. Try not to hang it under a tree or something. Your best bet is out on your pole system, out on a shepherd's crook, somewhere like that, where it's very visible. But like I said, they can find that red on a hummingbird feeder from 3/4 mile away. The first year we were open here in Lexington Park, we had a new customer come in and he was buying a feeder, not a hummingbird feeder, just a seed feeder. And he bought a red one, and it was hummingbird season at that point. And I asked, are you feeding the hummingbirds? No, we don't have hummingbird feeders. 30 minutes later, after he bought that red cylinder feeder, he was back in the store because a red hummingbird or a hummingbird was at that red feeder trying to find nectar. So he came back to get himself a hummingbird feeder because
He's
that
like,
hummingbird saw that red feeder and thought it was nectar.
oh, yeah, that's what I was telling Barb before we started that I have a red little treat feeder and I saw a hummingbird at it, so I put my feeder up the next day
Yep.
and they came back, so that was good. So Barb and I were also talking about other birds that we might be seeing in addition to the hummingbirds. You want to talk about what we
Yeah.
should be looking for?
Migration is in full swing, and the last couple nights have been crazy. So birds migrate when it's windy. And of course, these windy nights have been bringing a lot of bird activity through. So it's been crazy. The last couple days, we are seeing a lot of indigo buntings and blue grosbeaks. So if you look out and you see something blue, you're going to notice immediately that it's not a bluebird. You're going to like quickly, your eye is going to be, that's a different blue. So the way you're going to tell them apart, they're the only other two birds that are blue other than our blue jay that you're going to see right now. If it has rust on the wings, that's a blue grosbeak. The way I remember it, that gross rust is your blue grosbeak. Without the gross rust on the wing, that's your indigo bunting. So the two blue ones you're looking for is an indigo bunting and a blue grosbeak. So watch for those. Last night we started seeing the summer tanagers coming back. They will come to your feeders for suet and for bark butter bits, things like that, any type of suet foods. Bright, bright red. It's like the color of that red on that feeder there. Again, you're going to know that is not a cardinal I'm looking at. So watch for summer tanagers. Rose-breasted grosbeaks are moving through. The rose-breasted grosbeaks will not stay. They are black and white, a very round looking bird, black and white, and then a purpley rose breast. That's the male. The female is a plain Jane brown with white eyeliner. But again, she's going to catch your attention because she's a very round looking bird. But the male, you're going to know. Black, white, rose on the breast. But again, that's the rose-breasted grosbeaks just moving through. To get those to your feeders, make sure you have safflower and black oil. That's their favorite foods. If they stop by going north, you're probably going to see them in the fall coming back south. So watch for those when you see those. Typically, it's just for a week or so that you get to see those. So watch for those.
You said
Those are the,
Baltimore Orioles.
oh yeah, Baltimore Orioles right now. Several of us have had Baltimore Orioles right now. I had yesterday morning, I had Baltimore Orioles. So those oranges, you can slice an orange in half. Again, if you have the perches that we sell that go on our feeder, on our pole systems, you can slice that orange in half and drop it in the leaf of your perch. Or any feeders that have orange in them is another way to get them in. We've got a grape jelly that you can offer to them. They also come a lot for suet. The bark butter bits is another one they come for, but watch for the Baltimore Orioles. They're coming through. And again, they're just going to stop and move on north. So they're ones everybody want to see, our state bird, and we rarely get to see them. So watch for them. The last 2 days, we've been getting a lot of sightings of those ones. Has anybody seen any cool ones?
I saw a brown-headed nuthatch, but it's been
Yeah,
a couple weeks ago.
yeah, and that they're here year round, but they're typically more in South County down around the Ridge area. So it's kind of cool when we get to see them up around the Leonardtown area and that. Yes, so we are hearing a
Melissa.
lot of cedar waxwings. To watch for them, you're going to typically see them in a flock. Typically gonna be up in a tree. Watch for them around holly bushes, cedar trees, things like that, up eating the berries and that. And again, they'll typically be several of them together. Beautiful bird. If you haven't seen them before, they look like they're made out of wax and then they've got a black mask on. Beautiful bird.
I am just going to type this in chat. Merlin app. There's an app you can get for your phone if you aren't familiar with it already called Merlin, and that's sponsored by the Cornell Ornithology Lab. And it helps you ID birds, but you can also do like a song ID,
Right.
and you just press a button and it will record the bird songs that you hear and give you its best guess as to what it might be.
When you download it, make sure you download the pack for our area so it does a better job of
Oh,
IDing it. So make sure you do like the East Coast or the Southeast, depend on the area where you are. Otherwise, it's very far-fetched how it does the IDing. So definitely
yeah, might
um,
might
choose
tell
the
you
pack.
it'll tell you it's a toucan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So definitely choose the right pack and download
Yeah.
that pack for the area, but it's a great one to use.
hmm Rhonda saw red-winged blackbirds.
Awesome.
I see those around the library.
Right.
Oh, and Tiffany said, don't forget to change your pack when you travel.
Yes.
Same reason, so that it'll have the local ones for your area. So that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, great tip. Yeah, it's a good way to learn new birds when you do travel is by adding that pack in wherever you're going. And the more people use that pack, the smarter it will get.
Oh, that's nice. Tiffany said she would not be sad if the grackles all traveled south.
Right. Yeah. Few tips for those grackles if you're still struggling with those safflower. They struggle to crack that shell. So offering safflower and then caging feeders or using weighted feeders. You can also sprinkle cracked corn on the ground away from your feeders to attract them over there away from the feeders. Once they start harvesting the fields and that, they'll move out there, but of course that's still going to be a ways away. But yeah, those grackles can be annoying.
When you say a weighted feeder, are you talking about
Yeah,
like the squirrel-proof ones, like the heavier
exactly. Yeah.
things, like drag it down? Oh, okay.
Yeah, those the weighted ones that can then be adjusted. So you can adjust the sensitivity on them.
Okay, well, guess we're finishing up just a little on the early side today. Um, our next program is going to be in June. We're right at the end of April, so we're not having a May one, but our next one is June 13th, and that is going to be 12 elements of a thoughtful bird feeding station. Um, I know when I first went to your store, I got the whole rundown of like all these elements, and it's really great to review all of those. So even if, you already do bird feeding, it is great to get the reminder of like all of those basics. So that's what we'll be talking about. And it's also great if you know anybody who is brand new to it, because it would really get them a good leg up. Well, that is all I have, and everybody's saying congrats in the chat and thank you. You are a wealth of knowledge, and we appreciate you sharing it with us so regularly.